Good to see you guys. Couple of quick things before we get started. Somebody needs to spell check my work. So when you see a word that's misspelled, just make sure you point that out. Spelling's not my strong suit, but a couple things here. So my family just had our traditional family vacation, and we had a wonderful time. But there is a long-lasting tradition within the Johnston family vacation that somebody goes to the hospital. It's happened since I was a kid, all right? Since I was a wee kid. Like some of the bigger stories were my younger sister Kelly got her eyeball completely filled up with sand. We won't say how. So, trip to the emergency room to dig all the sand. You guys have no idea. Like the whole bottom of her eye was bulged out because there was so much sand in it. Oh, it was so bad. One time my brother Nick wrecked his bicycle, completely broke his arm, right? One time my brother Tim wrecked his bicycle, had a raspberry on his butt cheek about like that, right? So just a long history of injuries. Just somebody's going to get hurt. Oh, last year, baby Cyrus fell from like 6 foot high off the boat, head first on the concrete. Scared us to death, but turned out he was fine. So this year, my brother-in-law, John, who is an expert inner tube rider. You know, we pull it behind the boat, you ride the inner tube. That guy's probably about the best I've ever seen. But he is aging, right? He is aging. About how old is John, you think? About 41. Okay, so probably, I'm not saying it's his fault, but I'm not saying it ain't his fault. You know what I mean? So I was pulling him around on the inner tube, and he was really putting a show on. We had 2 inner tubes behind the boat, John and my youngest boy, Levi, and man, they were just getting after it, having a wonderful time. And you know, when you turn on the end, that's when you hit the biggest waves, right? So we made a turn on the end. John was in some big waves. He was putting on a show, and he ended up wrecking and thought for sure he broke his ribs. So a trip to the quick care, found out that a bunch of torn cartilage in this part of his body, and she's like, a broken rib might have been better. This is going to be months and months of intense pain. So keep John in your thoughts and prayers. But, you know, we checked the box. We kept the tradition alive. Somebody always gets hurt on the Johnston family vacation. Really, that was it, really. No other little scrapes or cuts or bumps. So, hey, we did pretty good. Oh, yeah, a few blisters. But anyway, so that was fun. Also, at the end of the vacation, I had to do some stuff with work in Louisville, had a pretty big meeting. It was the first time that most of my work people saw me without a mustache. So they had about the same impression you guys had last Sunday when y'all seen it for the first time. They were probably equally as mean. They said I looked like a wrinkly 7-year-old now. What are you laughing at? What are you laughing at? So, yeah, that maybe of all the things I've been called post-mustache, I think wrinkly 7-year-old's probably my favorite. Yeah, so that may be a second. One other person, Breck says I look like somebody that works behind a desk now. I don't know. But anyway, hey, we'll all get used to it. I'm to the point that I forget when people are looking at me funny. I'm like, do I have a booger? But it's the first time they've seen me without no facial hair. So I've done to the point where I've done forgot it's gone. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we're having a lot of fun with that. So we're continuing on our trek of being a blessing in 2026. You know, last week, Will was in Luke chapter 12, which is, if you have your Bible, that's where we're going to pick up pretty much right where Will left off. But, you know, he talked about, last week's lesson was so good. It was talking about fear. Like, we have no need fearing each other, right? What are you going to do to me, Paula? Kick me in the shin, right? Little bitty, tiny little segments of pain. Like, there's no sense being afraid of each other. But There is somebody we need to be afraid of, and that is God Himself. But by the way, He loves you so much, He knows how many hairs is on top of you. I'm telling you what. So, therefore, right, don't fear people. Read Romans like 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a great segment on why you shouldn't fear people. But don't fear people. Fear the guy that has the power to send you to hell. But by the way, He loves you so much that He knows how much hair is on your head. Therefore, do not be ashamed to acknowledge Christ in front of people. That was pretty much the nuts and bolts of Will's lesson last week. And we're going to pick up right there where he left off. But don't hang on to that thought about not being afraid to acknowledge Christ. Okay, that's a really, really, really big deal. You know, and we're breaking this chapter up into segments, but remember what this was. Like, this is kind of meant to be read from one section to the other. And, you know, these chapters and verses, you know, they were added into the Bible much, much later just to help us reference and cite things. But a negative side point of chapters and verses is a lot of times we'll read these in segments and forget that they're all tied together as a really big picture. So hang on to that idea, not to be afraid to acknowledge Christ before men. So if I put a title on today's lesson, keep your focus on Jesus. Keep your focus on Jesus. One more time. Keep your focus on Jesus. And we're going to learn why that is going to be absolutely so important for us to do that. So if we just jump in here and read a little bit from Luke chapter 12, we'll start in verse 13. We may not read all that right now, but we're going to read a little bit of it. So starting in verse 13, someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to them, "Man, who made me judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care, covetousness for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." So we'll pause right there and think about that verse. So my dad, one of the things that he has ingrained in me over time is things cannot bring you happiness. So I want you guys to think about some things, whatever that is, some things that you really wanted bad. Like maybe this item was a little bit more expensive and you really had to save and save and save and save, and you were so happy to finally be able to purchase whatever said thing was. And then ask your question, did this thing truly bring happiness to you? Now, maybe small segments of a ton of joy, right? I just bought a new to me bass boat. I love fishing. That thing has brought me small segments of joy, right? But did it change my life? Did it actually bring happiness? So really stuff falls into two categories. And this is your only two choices. It's either broken or about to be broken. Is that true, Paula? You got some stuff that would fall into this category? That's all you got, broken or about to be broken. Sam, he'd been driving a junker truck for a long time, and he's ready to move into his second vehicle. So we found him a really nice, low mileage Dodge. What is that thing? A Dodge Journey. He was excited about it. It's a really pretty car. So we test drove it, looked it over, and yep, that's the one that we want. We bought it. He owned it for 3 or 4 days, and the transmission went out. And I'm not saying went out a little bit, like all the way gone, right? All the way gone. Are you kidding me? Poor fella. Moved into his second vehicle that was supposed to be a more decent vehicle. You know, your first one you buy is high mileage. They're going to wreck them, right? You know, don't buy a nice one off the bat. So I felt so bad, right? I felt so bad for him that he saved and purchased this vehicle, owned it for a few days, and there goes the transmission. Circling back to my new bass boat. It's pretty nice, ain't it, Corbin? Sucker's awesome. Ask Ashley about it. For the first time, Ashley went out on the bass boat yesterday. That is not true. You have an open invitation. So she just got her hair did. She was looking all pretty, and we ate some supper, and I'm like, you want to go fishing tonight? And she's like, sure. And she didn't know what she was saying sure to, because, you know, that boat will do 70, and there's no really anything to protect your face. So it's like, and her hair's standing backwards. And huh? Not mine, right? Not mine. Yeah. But anyway. Oopsie. Sorry about that. Sam, edit that part out. So really, broken or about to be broken. I bought this bass boat. I was so excited about it. It's going to bring me tons of enjoyment, tons of happiness. I get it home, and guess what? It leaks. Boat, water coming into the boat. That doesn't add up to a nice equation, right? So I tried to fix it. I couldn't get it fixed. I had to take it to the shop and get it fixed. In the middle of bass season, what happened, Corbin? We're busting down the water wide open, and all of a sudden, all these alarms go off. It's running out. It can't keep oil to the motor fast enough, and it's screaming, "Stop! You're going to tear me up if you keep going." So I had to bring it back to the shop, right? So I mean, am I really getting joy out of this stupid thing? Small segments of pleasure, yes. Overall happiness in life, no. No, things cannot bring happiness. They're either broken or about to be broken. That's it. That's it. They're either broken or they're about to be broken. So then, you know, Jesus gives us an example of what he's talking about here. So let's read, starting in verse 16. And then he told them a parable saying, the land of a rich man produced plentiful. And he thought to himself, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crops. And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, so you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, those will they be. So is the one who lays up treasures for himself and is not rich towards God. So this verse right here, I have actually had some of my farmer buddies ask me, is it wrong for me to build a bigger, newer grain bin? And they're asking that like from a serious standpoint, because it says there's an example in the Bible where Jesus is mad at the guy for building a new storage, new place to store his grain. Well, if you're asking me that question, is it okay if I build a new grain bin? You're not really getting the context here. You're not really getting the problem. So what did I circle right there? Every one of them is a what? Every one of them is when this dude addresses himself as I or talks about himself in the first person. There's 14 boxes around here. So if you put yourself in this dude's position, who's in control of his own destiny in his mind? Himself, right? So I, me, my. I probably should have circled the second time he said so, because he would be referencing himself again there. So that's 15 times that this guy has his focus all the way on himself, saying, I done good. I got lots of crops. I'm going to build a new barn. I'm going to fill all that barn up with all kind of food so I can feed others. Is that what he says? No, so I can hang it up and go down the easy trail and relax a little bit and not work so hard. The problem with this fella is his attitude was all wrong. He was only thinking about himself. James 3:16 is one of my most favorite verses. And that says, where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be, not might be, not sometimes, there will be disorder in every vile practice. Think about that just a second. Every time we shift our focus onto ourself and self only, there will be disorder and vile practice. When we shift our focus only onto ourselves. Now, I'm not saying like don't take care of yourself, right? Corbin, don't stay up for days helping others. That's not healthy, right? You got to carve out time to rest. You got to carve out time to eat, right? I'm not saying don't take care of yourself, but I'm saying when self becomes the only thing that we think about, there will be disorder in every vile practice. I love Romans chapter 1. It's maybe my most favorite chapter. You'll ask me tomorrow, I might have a new favorite chapter, but right now Romans chapter 1 is really, really favorite. One of my favorites. If you would start reading there, and this is homework for you guys, I want you to start reading in Romans chapter 1, verse 26, and that starts out by saying, well, I don't want to misquote it. Give me 10 seconds. It starts out by saying, Ron 26, for this reason. For what reason? For this reason. If you go back and read verse 25, it's when people exchange God's truth for a lie. So for this reason, what's the reason? Exchanging God's truth for a lie. And then it's X-rated what happens after that. Literally X-rated. Those next verses, 26 through the end of the chapter, is literally X-rated. When you exchange God's truth for a lie, a part of that is when we only think about ourselves. From James, we learned there's going to be disorder in every vile practice. From Romans chapter 26, there's going to be a whole list of things that happen from homosexuality, all kind of evil. And even in Romans, it says people even invent ways to do evil. When you exchange God's truth for a lie, when you start only thinking about yourself. If you Google it, if you just Google it, like, what's the downsides from keeping the focus on yourself, you're not going to find much. It's actually encouraged to do that. Shocker, right? It's actually encouraged to do that. I'm telling you, that won't work. That will not work. When you keep your focus only on yourself, it's going to lead down evil, disorder, all kind of nastiness is going to come from that. But guess what? That's not the end of the verse. Jesus is going to provide a solution. So don't forget about the whole context here. Don't be afraid to acknowledge Christ. Things ain't going to bring us happiness anyway. Right? Robert, you ever had a motorcycle breakdown? Yeah. It happens, right? They're either broken or fixing to be broken. Things ain't going to bring true happiness. They're just not going to bring true happiness. But then he moves in and says, okay, I got a solution for you. So that'll be in starting in verse 25. This whole next section starts to talk about anxiety. Does that seem weird? Like, he says, don't forget to acknowledge Christ. Things ain't going to bring you happiness. When you start thinking about yourself and only yourself, then he starts to talk about anxiety. Does that seem odd? What happens when you get all up in your head? What happens when yourself consumes yourself? You start spiraling, right? Start spiraling almost out of control. And Jesus already knew that. That's why the next section is anxiety. So, verse 25. We won't read every one of those verses, but that's from verse 22 down to really verse 34. But we'll talk about a couple of these verses. You know, one of the outcomes of being all up in our head when self controls self, and we're not thinking about the needs of others, we're not surrendering over to Christ. Obviously, anxiety, worry, anxiety. What's going to happen? What's going to go on tomorrow? All the things, all the things. We just really get spiraled out of control. A couple of key points there, like in verse 25, it's like, how is this helping? Who by worrying can even add a single hour to their life? If Dad could do that, he would probably live to be about 200. Wouldn't you, Dad? You can't outrun your genetics. So if Dad's a worrier, guess what I probably am? I'm probably a worrier. I hide it a little better than he does, but I'm still a worrier. Why am I worried? It's because I'm getting in my head and I'm not truly surrendering to Christ, knowing that He's going to take care of me, right? I'm getting worried because I'm not keeping my focus where I need to keep my focus. Verse 31, instead seek His kingdom and these things will be added to you. What things? That whole section before that is talking about how beautiful the flowers were and God takes care of the flowers, and don't worry about things that you're going to wear and things that you're going to eat, and don't worry about all these things, because when you keep your focus on Christ and His kingdom, God's going to add all those things to you. He's going to take care of you. If He'll take care of the flowers, He's going to take care of us. How much more important are we than flowers to God? Did God send His Son to die for the beautiful flowers? He sent Him to die for us. God is going to take care. God is going to take care of us. So worrying don't help anyway. God's going to take care of us. Actually, in verse 32, we find out that it's the Father's good pleasure. It's His good pleasure to give us the kingdom. That's what God wants to do. He wants to give us the kingdom. Verse 34, verse 30. I didn't put that on there. Verse 32, let's read that. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Provide yourself with the money bag that do not grow old, with a treasure in heaven that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moths destroy. What's that saying is, Robert, when we're riding motorcycles in heaven, they ain't going to break down. They're going to run forever, Robert. No motorcycle in heaven is going to break down. Corbin, the bass boat that we fish with in heaven, it's going to be awesome. It might even do 150. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's going to go so fast. The fish are going to be biting, and the boat ain't going to break. Sam, your new car in heaven? I'm teasing with all that stuff, but what Jesus is trying to teach us here is we should not be so focused on ourselves, gathering up stuff for ourselves. Our treasures that we need to be building should be built up in heaven. Ain't nothing going to happen to them there. Now, is stuff bad? Having stuff bad? No. But I do feel like the stuff that we have, if we're not trying to utilize our stuff to bring glory to God, we're probably using our possessions incorrectly. You'll see the mission statement of our church here when you walk out. It's on the first slide on the TV. It's on the last slide on the TV. Our church is a family that surrenders to Jesus and glorifies God by loving all people and making disciples as we go. So a question that you should ask, you might look at your fishing pole, Corbin, and you say, how can I use these fishing poles to live out the church's mission? How can I use my boat to live out the church's message? How can I use my motorcycle to live out Jesus' mission for the church? How can I use my house? How can I use everything that I got? How can I use that to edify and build and connect people to the kingdom? That's the question that we got to run all of our stuff through. How can we do that? And by doing that, when we're utilizing our stuff in that category, it's God's good pleasure to add this stuff to us in order to connect people to the kingdom. And then the last verse is there, 34. Where your treasure is, there's going to be your heart. Where your treasure truly is, there's going to be your heart. And I think that's so powerful. If we get all up in self, and we get all up in our stuff, and we get all up, you know the guy. Like picture this guy in your mind. He's the guy that will never let you use his thing. He's out there polishing it every single day, spit shining whatever it is, beautifying it, almost keeps it so clean, he's afraid to use it himself, right? Like, you don't even want to drive it because what if I get it dirty or put a scratch on it? You know what I'm saying? Like, that is, and I'm not saying it's wrong to have nice things. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when that thing is your treasure, there's where your heart's going to be also. If we're using the things that we have to conduct the mission of the church, to bring glory to God, our treasures are actually going to be in heaven, building up things there. So, whoopsie. There we go. So that's the last slide, and that's pretty much the end of what I wanted to talk to you guys about today. But that is so powerful to me. Number one, a worrier. Number two, a person that likes stuff. It would be real easy for me to get all worked up in me. But every time I do, it always spirals down this rough hill. I heard somebody say, like, we've all heard, I guess, like once you give your life to Christ, it's kind of like we're slowly getting better every day, heading towards God. But that's really not true. I heard somebody the other day give the example, it's sort of like a slinky. If I had a slinky here in my hand and I just stretched it out, that would be a series of ups and downs, but overall trajectory would be getting better. And that's probably a much, much better analogy of trying to live this Christian life the way that we're supposed to. So things won't bring us happiness. They're either broken or fixing to be broken. Keep our focus on Christ. It's going to get self out of the way. When we keep our focus on Christ, we'll be laying up the treasures in heaven, which is the place that we want them to be anyway. So, probably almost everybody in here has already surrendered their life over to Christ, and I'm so thankful for that. If you haven't, today is a wonderful day to do that, right? We can take care of that today. Most of you have. If there's something that you need from the church today, if you need special prayers, prayer's powerful. We talked about that not too many weeks ago, right? Pray, don't forget, pray big prayers. Pray massive prayers. I shared with you guys one of the things that keeps me from praying big is I'm afraid if I pray big and God says no, I'll be disappointed. That's terrible thinking on my part. God spoke this earth into creation. You don't think He can do big things? You think He's on vacation? He can do big things. Pray big, humongous prayers. Pray them. If there's something you need today, you need prayers. If you need whatever it is, you want the church to pray with and for you, right now would be a wonderful time. You can come on up as we sing this next song. Let's stand. Hey there, this is Josh Johnston. I'm an elder and teach the youth group. I hope you liked the video. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, and turn on the bell to get notifications when we post videos or when we are live. Even better, join us in person at 1 Scenic Lane, Horse Branch, Kentucky, 42349. We meet Sunday at 9:30 for Sunday school, then worship service following at 10:30. Then on Wednesday evenings at 6:30 we have classes for adults, teens, and children. Our mission is to be a family that surrenders to Jesus and glorifies God by loving all people and making disciples as we go, and you are welcome.